Hello, Craig.
We're live on YouTube.
Can I move the camera?
I mean, you can, but now I had it set up where you were actually,
in the shot.
I know you can't see the monitor.
Yeah.
You don't have a way to see what's going on the
if
interwebs.
I could make any request in the future, that'd be appreciated. Because sometimes, I scroll through my YouTube at about 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I see myself on the Hoffman show, and sometimes it's looks like it's 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, that's a you thing. The camera sees what it sees.
The camera sees what it sees.
We got to teach you how to
about
sleep.
angles.
We got to teach you how to sleep.
Well,
is
sleep
what we got to do.
This is not the season to sleep, sir.
Yes, it's always the season to sleep.
Well, not for your boy. But hello, I'm happy to be here. I'm not going to do the victory lap bit. This is what it is. We have news.
No, we have news, but you were Mr. last week. Ben Johnson's not on my top 5 candidates, so you're the only person who's not sad, it seems like, in D.C. today.
No.
I think that is – I think that was a bit of an overreaction because I think Ben Johnson was a great candidate. At the end of the day, he's not coming, and I still think the area that we agreed is this is a deep candidate list. But the only thing –
that's more of my point, is that the list was deep.
The thing that I think really sucks is that Raheem Morris is not available. That's the one that hurts for me. Outside of that, they're going to get someone who's really good.
Yeah, I think – if going back to mid-December, Mike McDonald has been the guy that I wanted. I think his ability and what he did against the Shanahan offense this year, that's just one thing that I love. But Baltimore was historically good defensively, in terms of DVOA, in terms of just straight up stats, the only team in history to lead the league in takeaways, opponent points per game, and sacks. That means something to me. And the one thing that, you heard about Ben Johnson that, fair or unfair, it just is what it is. He had a litany of talent. And people are saying the same thing about Mike McDonald in Baltimore, but I just look at what the Ravens have, getting the most out of later round draft picks. There aren't a bunch of household names on Baltimore's defense. There just isn't.
I don't know, man. I can't co-sign that.
Because Justin Matabuke was who before?
Amon-Ra St. Brown was who? We can do this game all day, and I feel like we're wasting time trying to litigate the Johnson thing, but you don't get to say it now and have it all of a sudden be true when last week we went through it piece by piece and went.
I'm not talking about Ben Johnson. I'm talking about Mike McDonald here, though.
No,
the Ravens don't, I'm impressed with what he did because I don't think he's working with, top of the line talent at every position.
No, what I think it's interesting where he is working with top of the line talent, which is at the position that has been devalued by the rest of the league. And by the way, I will say I love that they took Kyle Hamilton because I am more interested in a head coach and a philosophy that you take good football players and figure out what they can do. And, everyone's like, we can't take Hamilton. He's not a post safety. So they don't use him as a post safety, but he can do everything else at an extremely high level.
And they do use him that way occasionally. His pre-draft was kind of ludicrous, all about a slow 40.
Right. I mean, if you watch the tape, you're like,
he covers ground ridiculously.
Yeah. So right. But I agree with you that he has done, he's not dealing with the primest cuts in Baltimore, and he has done a tremendous job of hiding their deficiencies, accentuating their strengths. And I think you look at what they did on Sunday, even in a loss, that wasn't on the defense. They held Patrick Mahomes and company to a goose egg in the second half.
Yeah, I think he's probably at the top of my list right now. But as I was advocating for last week, I think Aaron Glenn is someone that has the charisma and the pizzazz about him to go knock the interview out of the park and really make Adam Peters and Josh Harris think twice about this decision. Now, to me, the interview part was always the most important thing in this, and I think Adam Peters and Josh alluded to it when they spoke to the media about 2 or 3 weeks ago. They're looking for a leader of men. It's not really about your offensive X's and O chops. It's not about how good you can call defenses. They need someone to come in here and grab this program by the throat and set and establish a culture. You know who's someone out there, Craig, that I think is very capable of doing that, and I'd probably put him at number 3 right now of the available people.
You're gonna
Dan Quinn.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to go Vrabel. I thought you were going to go off the board.
I guess I can talk about Vrabel here for a second, and I'll do it more tonight on Overtime on the Fan, but Vrabel is not going to get this job. They have not interviewed Vrabel for one specific reason that I omitted. Foolish of me. Dude, Rand Carthen and Adam Peters are probably like this. Rand Carthen and Mike Vrabel couldn't, sit in the same room together, apparently.
That's probably true. And
so that makes sense why he has not been, interviewed here. Not that he's not qualified, but
no, that's a good point.
Perception is 99% reality.
I think it's important to point out the model, right? The model is that you're trying to build what Campbell and Holmes have in Detroit, what Kyle and John Lynch have in San Francisco, what Kevin and now I'm doing
Brett Veach and Andy Reid in Kansas City.
Like
they have a type.
Sean Les have in LA. Like these organizations that are good every year have a tremendous head coach and top executive relationship. And Vrabel is gonna want power. And Adam Peters is like, nah, we're going to do this way where we collaborate and you're not going to try to run over me. And this is something that I wonder, like, did Ben Johnson, whether because he knew he wouldn't get it was a way for him to get out of the job and then be like, well, they didn't give me what I want, or because he genuinely wanted it, like, did Ben Johnson want too much power? I think that is a legitimate question. A guy like McDonald at 36 ain't going to come in, like, he doesn't have the standing to ask for anything. And I think Dan Quinn, his record and resume, I don't think he has the standing to ask for it either. But they do have an ability to collaborate and be really smart and do what they do well. And, that's another thing of like people want to make this Quinn-Ron comparison. And at the very least, my guy Teresh has been listening the whole show, and he had such a good tweet. He's had like 7 good tweets, and I keep forgetting to read all of them. But Resh was like, even if he is someone who is a former defensive coordinator, yada, yada, he's not going to come in and be asked to sit on board meetings about a rebrand, do crisis management, and whatever. And by the way, I think Dan Quinn is a much better coach than Ron Rivera.
Yeah, I don't understand all the disdain towards Dan Quinn. He took the Falcons to the Super Bowl. They were good while he was there. His record was over 500. Like, he did a lot of good things there. The staff that he had underneath him, which he picked, multiple head coaches on there. So he is like the leader of all leaders. I think he's like closer to like a Dan Campbell type of guy where like he can galvanize a room, and he's smart enough on his side of the ball where he can piecemeal things. I think he'd be a damn good candidate. I'm not turning my nose up at anybody, though.
I'd be curious to see what he does in round 2, because I do think that if you say that just the stuff you said, I feel like we're switching roles here and I'm playing devil's advocate. But like Rivera also had, not Brandon Beane, but he did have Brandon Beane there with him in Carolina. He's now the GM in Buffalo. And then
Sean
McDermott with him in Carolina. And they did make a Super Bowl and all that kind of stuff. But I just because the resume looks similar doesn't mean they're the same. And I that's ultimately there's no data point I can point to other than to say, I don't think those are the same dudes. I agree with you that McDonald is the guy to me with what is left. My concern is, and it's not, concern is too strong. I keep saying concern. It's not concern. It's my question is, what does his staff look like? And that is something where if you're doing the pros and cons of these guys, you have to give the advantage to Quinn because he has the Shanahan tree connections. He has those offensive connections. What does it look like, especially, by the way, when Jim Harbaugh is trying to hire a staff out in L.A., and John is going to have to replace some people in Baltimore. How does he compete with his 2 former bosses to fill out his staff? What's his network look like? I think that's going to be a tremendous question to try to answer.
I think a lot of it's going to come down to obviously the relationships that Mike has. I wouldn't be surprised if he dipped back into the Michigan well to try to get coaches here in
They're
DC
about to upgrade.
He's the guy.
The thing is, they just lost Jim, and so their OC is now the head coach, and on down the list. So
things are moving. I like the way you put it. I think concern's a strong word. It's a question that I have, but I'm sure Adam Peters has that question. I'm sure Josh Harris has that question. So it will be answered, and however Mike decides to do it, the world is his oyster, so to speak. If he gets the job. But that's going to be the case with Quinn. That's going to be the case with Vrabel if he ends up being the guy. That's sort of my thing, right? They're probably going defensive mind here. It feels like we're counting out Bobby Slowick, but
I mean, for whatever it's worth, Phillips and I did a little YouTube live stream earlier, and he seemed to get a note while we were on the interwebs saying that Slowick is probably not getting the job.
Okay, so you're probably going with a defensive-minded coach. That same question that we have about the OC and the staff applies for all of those guys. If you really want to, fans out there, and me and Craig will probably do this on our own time as well, really want to dig into the weeds and look at where some of these guys have been at. You'll start to get some clues as to what they may like to do. But with McDonald, I think it's the biggest question mark because he's got the least amount of experience and in turn probably the least amount of relationships.
Like that's
Michigan,
the difference.
But yeah.
That's the difference.
Georgia,
in the NFL, he has never, like, Quinn worked with Kyle.
Yes.
And he had Raheem, and obviously Raheem's gonna have to fill out his staff in Atlanta. But Dan has those connections to that tree, and he's been around the NFL for 25 years.
Yeah.
Mike McDonald's, 25 years ago was 11. So it is a question. But then again, he probably hung out with a bunch of dudes at the combine, bunch of dudes at the Senior Bowl over the years, like, and this is where Adam Peters is super helpful. Like, Adam's been around multiple organizations. He's been around multiple coaching trees. He's been around multiple systems. He's got relationships. And if you can get a great veteran OC potentially, that guy can fill out his own staff.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing to remember as well. All right. When we get back, that staff, whoever it is going to have to pick a quarterback. I've started watching the quarterbacks. You have started watching the quarterbacks.
Yeah. I have my overreaction.
We like the same guy, but I think Lynnell's going a bit overboard on one of the top prospects. So, quick divergent from the Ben Johnson news. I want to get this overreaction in on an Overreaction Tuesday.
This is the Hoffman Show on the T980 and the Odyssey app.